Most people are eligible to start Medicare at age 65. However, many of you may not be eligible because there's a rule that's going to prevent your eligibility. Hi, I'm Erika Smiley with MedicareSchool.com. I'm one of the lead educators here. And in this video, I want to teach you what you can do to bypass this rule and start taking Medicare at age 65 and beyond. Okay, so let's talk about this rule that could prevent your eligibility. So, of course, you have to be 65 or older to take Medicare, but you also have to have had 40 quarters or 10 years, because pretty much there's 4 quarters in a year. So 10 years or 40 quarters that you have worked and paid into the Medicare system. So now some of you, maybe you're a caregiver or a homemaker, maybe you stayed home with your children and you don't have your own 40 quarters. Now that's okay because you can get that 40 quarters from either a spouse or an ex-spouse, but there are some rules around this. So first, let's look at a current spouse. So if it's a current spouse, you had to have been married at least a year or longer. Okay? And this current spouse, they don't have to be taking Social Security, but they do have to be eligible for Social Security. So they have to be at least 62 years old. Okay? So married a year or longer and 62 years old. Now, if we want to go back to an ex-spouse to get those 40 quarters, you had to have been married to this ex-spouse for 10 years or longer. They also have to be eligible for Social Security, so they have to be 62 years old. And then that ex-spouse, you could not have remarried yourself before the age of 60. So you could not have remarried before age 60. So not remarried before age 60. If you're married after age 60, that's okay, but you can't have married before age 60. Now, a lot of people can go online, and it's very easy to enroll in Medicare. You just go to ssa.gov, you can set up an account there, and you can electronically enroll in Medicare online. But just note, if you are going to have to use either a spouse's or ex-spouse's 40 quarters, you will need to call and schedule an appointment with your local Social Security office and go in and sit down with them to enroll, because you're going to have some proof of that, either a divorce decree or a marriage decree proving for that spouse or that ex-spouse. Okay, so when we talk about not being eligible for Medicare, it actually isn't just that you're not eligible, it's more that you're not eligible to get Part A premium free. So actually, if you have lived in the United States, you're a permanent resident for 5 years or more, and you're age 65, you can get Medicare. But what we're really talking about here and having the 40 quarters has to do with that Part A. Because if you remember, 99% of Americans have worked for 40 quarters and paid into the system. So they're going to get Part A for $0 every month. So really what we're talking about is having those 40 quarters so you're eligible for that premium free. Okay. Now, everyone has to pay $185 for Part B, that's monthly. That could be a little bit higher depending on your income. That's called an IRMA. But really, we want to look at having those 40 quarters and the difference it makes in what you're going to pay for Part A. So if you have between 30 and 39 quarters, let's say you're just short of those 40 quarters, Part A, you can still get it, but you have to pay for it. So that's actually going to be $285 a month that you would pay. Now remember, this is a monthly premium, and that's going to be for the rest of your life. So if you live to be 80, 85 years old, that's a lot of money you're going to be paying, okay? Now if you have 30 quarters or less, and you don't have 40 quarters to take from a spouse or an ex-spouse, it's actually going to cost you $518 a month to get Part A. So really, if you're somewhere close, if you don't have 40 quarters to take from a spouse or an ex-spouse, and you've worked, let's say, 36, 37 quarters, I would highly recommend that you keep working until you get those 40 quarters. And that's because in 2025, you only have to make $1,810 to count as a quarter. So really that could be very part-time work. So if you're that close, you could save a lot of money if you keep working, and then you're gonna get to those 40 quarters and have that Part A for $0. All right, so now you either have your own 40 quarters or you've gotten them from a spouse or an ex-spouse. So when do you enroll in Medicare? What's the timing of it all? So if you're turning 65, you're gonna come in through what's known as the initial enrollment period, or your IEP, okay? So now the way this works, it's a 7-month window that's wrapped around your birthday month. So for this example, we're going to go with a July birthday. Let's say your birthday is on July 10th, okay? So you're turning 65 in July 10th, so you pretty much have 3 months before or 3 months after to enroll in Medicare. Now, if you enroll in April, May, or June, your coverage is going to start on July 1st. If you enroll in July, your coverage is going to start in August. If you enroll in August, your coverage will start in September. If you enroll in September, it'd start in October. And October would be your last month to enroll, and you would start your coverage on November 1st. So now if you have a birthday that's on the 1st of the month, this is going to bump this all 1 month up earlier. So let's say your birthday is July 1st. That means you'd be eligible in June. So you would want to enroll in either May, April, or March, and your coverage would start June 1. Or you could enroll in July, August, or September. Same thing. If you enroll in June, coverage would start in July. If you enroll in July, coverage would start August. If you enroll in August, coverage would start September. And here, your last month to enroll would be September, and October 1 would be when your Medicare coverage would start. So just keep in mind, there is that unique thing if you have a first of the month birthday where it's going to bump this whole process up a month. So you may wonder, just because I'm turning 65, do I have to take Medicare? Should I take Medicare? And really, the answer is no, you do not have to take Medicare if you continue to keep working. If you're going to work, maybe till you're 67, 68, 69, you don't have to take Medicare. And this is a common misconception because a lot of people think if you don't enroll in Medicare, at least Part A, when you turn 65, you're going to be penalized. And that's just not true. So let's look at, there are rules though around this that you want to make sure if you're working past 65, you're very aware of these things. So first of all, you want to make sure that you are covered by credible coverage. So that's either your employer plan or a spouse's employer plan. Now, what does credible coverage mean? So a couple things to note. You must be with a large employer that has 20 or more employees on the payroll. Okay, so that's considered a large employer. Now, if for some reason you have 19 or fewer employees on the payroll, then that is not going to count as credible coverage. That would actually move to the second payer position, and you would be in the first payer position. So just know, if you have 20 or more employees, you're good to go with that plan. That's going to be credible coverage. If you have 19 or fewer employees on the payroll at your company, then you do need to enroll in Medicare. Okay. Now let's look at an HSA account. So if you're contributing to an HSA account, which is a health savings account, these are wonderful accounts to contribute to. If you're contributing to one or your spouse, you want to make sure that you do not enroll in Part A. Now here's why. Of course, that money in that HSA is your money. They can't take it away from you. But if you enroll in Part A, they're no longer going to allow you to contribute to that HSA. So you're going to cut off you being able to keep putting money in there, and you want to be able to keep contributing to that. So definitely say no to Part A if you have an HSA or if you and your spouse are contributing to an HSA. Okay? And the last thing is you may want to compare. So maybe you have not so hot group coverage, right? Maybe your employer coverage is not so great. So some people, they do compare their group coverage to Medicare and what Medicare has to offer. Medicare may financially make more sense for you, or it may be better coverage. So here's some things you can look at. You can look at your monthly premium. What are you paying each month to be on that employer plan, okay? Usually, we'd say if it's around $250 or higher, you may want to look at Medicare. It may be a better option, okay? Then we look at things like co-pays. What are your co-pays? Deductibles, okay? And then your max out of pocket for the year. So what's the most you would spend if something happens and you're hospitalized? So, you know, if you have high deductibles, high max out of pocket, you're paying a high premium, you may want to compare the two plans, and it may make sense to go into Medicare. But no, you absolutely do not have to take Medicare when you're 65 years old. You can keep working as long as you have credible coverage. Hey, if you found this video helpful, do us a favor. Go give us a like. We always appreciate it. And subscribe so you don't miss out on any of those future videos. And leave us a comment. We love to hear what you have to say. We love to answer any questions you have. That's what it's here for. So drop us a comment below. All right, so let's say you're coming into Medicare after age 65. We talked about that initial enrollment period, but if you're coming in after 65, that initial enrollment period is gone, right? We're past age 65. So you're going to be coming in through what's known as the special enrollment period, or the SEP. Okay, so this special enrollment period is going to be when you're either retiring or for some reason you're losing credible coverage. Okay, so we're coming into Medicare after age 65. Now, a couple things we want to make sure of when you go to retire. Maybe you're going to be 68 or 69 years old. A lot of people don't know that you want to make sure that you have no gaps in credible coverage. So remember, credible coverage is 20 employers or more on the payroll. And COBRA does not count as credible coverage. So you need to make sure that you have no gaps in your coverage back to age 65. And we're going to prove that when you enroll with two forms here. So if you're coming in through an SEP, there's two forms you're going to need. The first one is called an L564. The other one is called a CMS 40B, okay? So you can download these online. If you work with one of our guides, they can help you with these forms. But really what this first one is, the L564, you're gonna fill out the top half, and it's just gonna have your basic information on there. And this is gonna prove that you've had credible coverage. So you have the dates on there of when your work and group plan started, when it ended, and then you're going to have your employer sign this, and you turn this into the Social Security office. Now the CMS 40B, that's just where you're going to say, yes, I'd like to start Part B, I want to enroll in Medicare, and then you're going to tell them when you'd like to start. So let's say you're retiring in June, and you're going to have coverage through the end of June. You would probably want to write in that remarks section, hey, please start my Medicare coverage on July 1, so you don't have any gaps in coverage. So we've talked about how to have those 40 quarters or how to get them from a spouse or ex-spouse if you don't have your own. We've also talked about how to come into Medicare either at age 65 through the IEP or after age 65 through the SEP. But there's one more big decision that you need to make. Original Medicare has some gaps, so you need to have something with it to fill in those gaps. And really there's two routes you can go. One is a supplemental plan, the other is an Advantage plan, Medical Advantage plan. So let's kind of compare both and see which one would be a better fit for you. So looking first of all, are there networks or can you see any provider? So if you remember with the supplemental plan, yes, you can go to any doctor in the US that accepts Original Medicare. And again, that's about 98% of doctors. So you have a little bit more freedom with those doctors where you won't have that necessarily with an Advantage plan. You have to make sure you stay in network, okay? That's going to save you money if you're in network versus out of network. National coverage. So yes, with the supplemental plan, we do have national coverage. So if you travel a lot, that's something to keep in mind because again, you can go to any doctor that takes Original Medicare. With the Advantage plan, those are going to be set up more like a group plan where it's more of a local network and you have those in or out of network doctors, okay? Now, is it a lifetime policy? Is it portable? So here's something to know with the supplemental plans. That is yours for life. They cannot take it from you. They cannot say, hey, you've gotten older or you're having bad health, so we're going to take this plan away from you. As long as you pay your monthly premium, that supplemental plan is yours for life. Now, the only way they can take it away is, of course, if you don't pay that monthly premium. Now, with the Advantage plans, those are not so much lifetime. You can keep those, but they can change. So the doctors that are in or out of that network could change. The medications that are covered or not covered on that formulary could change. So people tend to shop those more every year and kind of look at those Advantage plans. And also, you can't take it with you when you move. A supplemental plan, let's say that you're a snowbird and you're 6 months out of the year down in Florida, 6 months out of the year up in Boston, right? You can take that plan with you. You could move and take your supplemental plan with you. The Advantage plans, they're more local, so if you do move, you're going to have to switch to a new plan. Now, prior authorizations. A prior authorization is if your doctor says you need a procedure or a surgery, and then the insurance company has to approve that, right? So common example, let's say you need a hip surgery. The insurance might say, hey, no, you have to go to physical therapy for 3 months first before we approve that. So with the supplemental plan, there are no prior authorizations. If your doctor says you need a procedure or surgery, you can schedule that, right? With the Advantage plans, you do have to deal with those prior authorizations. Referrals, you can schedule with any doctor on your own. You don't need referrals from your primary care doctor with a supplemental plan. Where you do, with the HMO especially, you have to have some referrals with the Medicare Advantage plans. Predictable cost. So the predictable cost with a supplemental plan, you're going to pay a monthly premium, and that's usually between $150 to $180. It really depends on where you live in the country. But outside of that monthly premium, if you're on the most popular plan, which is Plan G, all you pay out of pocket is that $257 Part B deductible, okay? So that's a little bit more predictable cost. Yes, you have to pay a monthly premium, but it's expected. You know what you're gonna have to pay. Your max out of pocket, $257 if you're on that G plan. With the Advantage plans, it's very appealing because they can be $0 a month. So you're not going to have the monthly expense, but you're going to have to pay copays and deductibles and a max out of pocket as you go. So that maximum out of pocket could be thousands of dollars. Just something to keep in mind, if you do have a medical event or you're hospitalized, it could be $5,000 or $6,000 bill for that max out of pocket depending on your plan. Now, with both, you have to have Part A and Part B. So you have to be enrolled in both Part A and Part B, which is why we talked about getting those 40 quarters and how to get enrolled. And then lastly, the premium, the monthly premium, which we talked about here. You're going to have a monthly premium with a supplemental plan. You're not going to have it with an Advantage plan. So if you do have a tight monthly budget, that Advantage plan might be the route you want to go. So we've looked at both of these options now. We've talked about how to get your 40 quarters. If you still think, hey, I need a little help through this, I'd like to walk through my unique situation, give us a call. Our guys are always happy to help. They can walk you through everything and help you decide, is supplement or Advantage the right route for you, and what's the timing of getting you enrolled.